when I was an artist, I had the same like click realization, like, oh, do or die. I had that feeling every single day, do or die, like that urgency. I'm a super hard worker and I've always had that. But for me, and I'm curious how this was for you, that pressure changed the art in a terrible way. Like the starting to look at making music as creating a product completely ruined it for me. And that's, I think, the number one reason. I don't like attention. I don't like being in the spotlight. I think that was a huge factor as well. It just seemed incompatible with like success in that realm. But the number one reason that I don't think I'm still like actively trying to be an artist is that my relationship with making music changed because I put that external pressure on it to be a source of income, to support myself, to eventually support a family and like, facilitate the quality of life that I want to live. All of that seemed to completely change the relationship with the actual music and my process for writing. And it just created this whole layer that clouded the magic, which was why I got into music in the first place, which was like this flow state, like deep, kind of very present connection with the art of writing and making music. So I'm curious what that relationship is like for you.
Well, as you know,
I hope I didn't just fuck it all up by...
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Because you hear my music, right? You see this look and this feel. I'm really taking a leap into going into a realm that, like, I'm not making top 40 music. I'm not looking like I don't dress or speak the words that like the norms or like the other success stories are doing. I'm just looking at it from a formula basis. And I'm having faith that if I lean into it hard enough, that it will happen.
Which is totally true.
It's banking on being myself.
Yeah.
Really, like my songs,
I love that. I think that's it. You believe that if you make music that's true to you and you found some way, which we can talk about how to protect that process from like the external pressures of, well, if I use this chord instead of that chord, probably more people would like this song.
Honestly, I don't even think about that ever.
So you've sheltered yourself from like that connection, but then you've applied all of that pressure to the next part of the process, which is getting that music out there, putting yourself out there, building the channels, advertising, marketing, becoming a business, building a business around the music. But you've been able to do that on a foundation of music that is true to you as an artist. I think that is incredibly rare. And I think it's cool. And I think it's why you're going to be successful. And I hope it never changes.
Well, I appreciate that. It also coincides with like some books. Look, on the music standpoint, the goal was never to make money doing it. Like there was no goal. I was just making music because I love to make music, and I got onto this path. But now, in terms of how do I get it out, and how do I cut through, and how do I make this happen, it forced me to read marketing books and understand branding. And the more books I read, the more I got that the truer you are to yourself, the more you will cut through because you are yourself. State your beliefs. Don't worry that it's going to be polarizing, because if it doesn't polarize 100% of the population. Who are you going to even communicate to? Let's say you state your religious views or your political views. You might lose 50%, but now you'll have someone in the 50% who actually gives a shit about what you're saying. So the niche that you create for yourself can only be based on being entirely yourself. You have to be yourself. If you read that book back in the day,
I wish we had this conversation 10 years ago. Just thinking that.
And there's these pressures, and because we look at what's going on in music. We look at the charts. We say, oh, well, if I can ride that wave, then I can do it. But I look, I read Perennial Seller, Ryan Holiday, and he talks about Metallica. For 10 years, they were on the road. They made music that was, first of all, they never even had a music video, and they were in the MTV age. Their first video was Metallica 1 in 89.
I didn't realize that. That's crazy.
Yeah, and their first video was an 8-minute video. Okay? They crafted a sound that was not like any other sound. They created their own place, their own niche, right? They didn't try to be the next Springsteen. They didn't try to be the next Poison. They just were bold enough to create their own place in the ecosystem. Same with Iron Maiden. Like, how did Iron Maiden and Metallica and who is it? The Grateful Dead are the biggest touring acts in the world, and they've never been on top 40 radio.
Right.
But they have stayed true to themselves for the entirety of their careers.
And they have dedicated fan bases.
They have dedicated fan bases because they're true to themselves. They have consistently built since their inception. Like, it was small at the beginning. Maybe it was easier to get a record deal if you sounded like someone else at the beginning, but you're fighting for market space, right? Whereas they, whether they knew it or not, created their own segment. And that's what I just chose to follow. I said, I believe in what I'm doing. And honestly, I don't have the ability to just do what other people are doing. So that's not in me.
Yep.
So I can't do it. And I read enough branding books and marketing books to realize that the real secret sauce is just be boldly yourself, speak your truths, and people will latch onto it. Because as an independent artist, and Metallica and Maiden and all those guys were all indie. To a certain extent, they're still kind of indie and they just make deals with majors. I guess I could be wrong. But when you're an indie and you're creating your own niche and your own environment, you don't have the same rules as when you're under a major label. You don't have to hit the same thresholds, the same numbers to make your revenue. You own a lot more of what you're doing. You own almost entirely what you're doing.
And control more.
Control. So do I need to have 20,000 people at every show? I sure love it. But without a record label that's in a 360 deal or something, 2,000 people at a show will probably give me the same amount of revenue. And sure, maybe that'll get me to 50,000 people per show at a certain time. But there's more ownership. There's obviously, I have the ability to fund myself during this process, but I realize that money it can't really get you that far. There's a lot of people with way more money than me who'd like to be rock stars, and it's not going to happen.
Oh yeah.
Because it takes I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out. But I went on there a little bit, but
No, that's like exactly what I was looking for.